I'm Gerwin. I'm a software developer from Vienna with my own company. I'm here today to talk about the various APIs the Google Plus platform has to offer at the moment. So I've been playing around with the Google Plus platform since the very beginning. And so, yeah. So the Google Plus platform at the moment, we have various parts in the platform. You have the REST API, which allows you to access the public data of Google Plus posts, people. You have the Hangouts API, which allows you to write collaborative web apps. I don't know how many have been in a Hangout before. How many have been using Google Plus Hangouts? Oh, quite a few. How many have used any Hangout apps so far or tried with Hangout apps? Yeah. So basically what a Hangout app is it's just a web application which runs inside of an iframe in the Hangout and allows you to have APIs to interact with the various people. Then what's new since I/O is the History API. That's a fairly new thing which allows you to write to Google Plus in a limited sense. It allows you to write moments, they call it, to a private history in Google Plus, and then from this private history you can share stuff out to your circles, to public. Then what you also have on the webmaster website, you have various plugins, so you can +1 content, share content, you can display badges for your profile or your page. And then also I think for Android it now is public since several weeks. You have SDKs which allow you to let people sign into your Android or iOS application using the Google Plus account. And you also have the possibility to share stuff out of your Android application and +1 stuff, and also write to the History API. So that's the current state. I've given a similar talk maybe like a year ago when it all was very fresh. It looked like this back then. So you see there's quite a lot new stuff. So this talk would probably have been ended by now if it was last year, but we're gonna spend some more time now. So what I'm gonna start with is the REST API, which allows you to read public data. So you have various resources which you can access. So you have access to people or pages, you have access to activities with all images attached, geolocation, and you have access to comments in the posts. So probably the best way to start, so the best way to actually play around with the APIs, how many know the API Explorer? The Google API Explorer? Oh, no one. Okay, something new for you. So what this does is you actually have access to all new APIs that Google Plus develops is based on the same discovery-based REST system. So you have a whole bunch of services which you can access. Is this large enough for everyone to see? Or should I can zoom in a bit? So you have access to the various services which allow APIs. And what we are interested in is the Google Plus API in this case, but I'm gonna go back. So the first request we want to look at is how to find people, how to access information about people. So if you use the plus.people.get request, it allows you to access one person with their Google Plus ID. And if I execute this, so you see the base URL for all requests is the googleapis.com/plus/version1, and then we access people with this ID, and for every request you make to the Google Plus API you need an API key which authenticates your application, so you have a limited quota which you can for queries per day. And so when we look at the response, so what you get is you get a nickname, you get gender, you get URLs which are linked from the profile. You get the name, you get the tagline, you get the about me, relationship status, organization. So basically you get all the information which is visible on your public Google Plus profile. And if you just look here in comparison, let's go to about. You see all the information which is here is basically visible in the API if you decide to display this public. So in the Google Plus you can still define that you only want certain parts to be visibly publicly, and then only those parts will be returned by the API. So one thing where you can use this, so I've written some demo code, is you could use this to make a simple JavaScript to just display a profile badge on a website, for example, which reads the information. And if we just go into the code. So what I'm doing here, I'm using the Google JavaScript client library for this, which allows easy access to all the APIs. So what I'm doing here, I'm loading the JavaScript client, set my API key to access the APIs. Then I load the Plus client of this part, and then I just go and, where's the request? Yeah, so I just make here request to the client plus people get with the user ID, execute it, and then I just get the JSON response and can use the JSON however I want to construct my DOM. Let's see, so you can also search for people, which is probably more useful, so you can just enter any query string. I'm not quite sure what is searched, so it's definitely the profile information with the search, but in some part it seems it also searches posts. I'm not quite sure how it works, but for example, if we use the query to search for DevFest, let's search for people about DevFest. Execute, and then you get an array of people objects. So you have the DevFest Berlin in here, GTG DevFest, DevFest West, DevFest Vienna. So you see, in this case, you don't get the full information about the person. You just get display name, URL, and the ID. But then you could go on and use this ID in the people.get to request more information. So if you look here, I just to demonstrate. So with people.search, I'm just rendering the basic information, but then if I use search and get in combination, I first search for all the people, and then for each of them I render the additional information. So one thing you have to think about in this case is that this is already, because I have like, I think 20 results in here, so that's already 20 requests to the API, or actually 21, one search request and 20 get requests. So maybe more interesting than people are actually the activities. So you have again two possibilities. Either you list the activities of the public activities of one person, or you use search. So if I if you go into search, so this is, I can request my public for one user ID, the public posts with up to 100, and then I have paging to go further back. So actually with this I could go to my very first post in Google+. It takes a while because you have to page through all the results. So if you look at the response here, so one item, you have the activity. So you have a title, which is just like the first part of your post. You have when it was published, when it was updated, if it was updated. You have a unique activity ID here. This is probably the most important thing. This is unique across the whole API, so you can use this to request more information about this activity. For example, you can get the comments for this activity. You can get the people who +1 or reshared the activity. Then you have here the person who did the activity. In this case, it's me, of course, because they are my posts. And then you have this object, and inside of this object you have all the rest information about the information about the activity. So you have the full content, which is the full post text. You have, in this case, let's see if I find one with, let's see, attachments. So you see you have here the text with formatting, so this is HTML formatted content, so you can just put it out and render it like this. You have here number of replies, number of +1ers, number of resharers, and you also see you have links to actually request those items. So if I use this request, I would get the comments for this activity. And in this case I also have attachments. In this case I have an album attachment with several photos in it. In this case it's actually just one photo in the album. So to see how this can look like, where are my activities? Let's just do the activities.list. So in this case I'm rendering my recent activities from my Google Plus stream. So this you can, so you could use this is just a simple widget which you can just also put on your website and have your latest activity displayed. And also have here the activities of DevFest Vienna. So in this case I'm only rendering one image, but you have access to, so the problem is if you have an album with lots of images attached, it will only render the first 14, 15 photos of it. You don't have access to the others, unfortunately. And maybe, let's see. Okay, yeah, so in this case, let's see, this is a reshare. So maybe what's most difficult to distinguish in the API is if it's an original post or a reshare. So if we take a look back at our list, let's see, reshare posts. No, not that one. I want. Where is it? Work share. Okay, so in this case, if you have a reshare, you have the actor who reshared it outside. But if you look at the object, you also have an actor object there, and inside of the object you have the original activity. So in this case you have an activity, and the object again is an activity with the information about the original post. So in this case this was originally shared by Google Plus developers, and then I reshared this. So if you want to check, you can actually see if the actor is the same as the object.actor. And you also see in this case I have the ID of my activities here, and inside of the object you have the ID of the original post. So in this case you can actually, with this ID, go back to original post and request more information about the original post as well. So the other thing you can do is, of course, you can again search by queries. And if we just look at example, I have just rendered one where people are talking about DevFest. So we have actually a picture from inside here. So this is just again requesting the DevFest, and you can choose if you want to have recent results or best results. So the best ordering is just determined somehow. It's this actually you get, they are pretty much the same results you get when you use the normal Google Plus search. So those are pretty much the same results in here. We search for DevFest and most recent. We will see that those are actually the, where am I? Yeah, they're pretty much the same results as on the other side. Another thing you can do, of course, so if you search, the problem at the moment is you can't filter your search really. You just can request all posts with a certain keyword. But of course what you can do is filter afterwards. So you request all the information and then you just take out all the images. And so because cat a day is a big thing on Google Plus, everybody loves cats on Google Plus, don't ask me why. You can just go on and request all cat photos, all cat a day photos which have been posted, and this list goes on forever. Oh, interesting cats. And another thing you can do, because I said you can request more information. Should I go away or? So what you can do if you request more information, you can actually, does this work? So I don't know how many have heard about the community prize, which is going on this weekend. So the thing about the community prizes, we're gonna look what people post on Twitter and on Google Plus and see how much interactivity you get. And so this is actually querying the Twitter API and the Google Plus API and sees how many retweets, plus ones, reshares you get. And if I just order this, so Michelle is still on top, but Dante, so yeah. So we're gonna use this at the end to see who's been the most interactive socially, and there's gonna be a special prize. I'm not sure what it's gonna be, but so keep posting. So let's see, comments. Yeah, so you can also request a single activity, but this in most cases isn't really very interesting. So you can just request one activity if you use this set something ID string. And you can, as I said, you can request the comments, which I'm using at some part here because I'm checking who did the comments to see. But where I'm using this in real life on a not very important site is I'm actually using it on my website. So I have here comments which are taken from one post on Google Plus and displayed here, and then I just can go to the Google Plus post and have the same comments if people want to comment. I'm using this as a sort of commenting system on my, yeah. So and this actually on each page I have a separate post. So what I'm doing here, let's see if I find the script. Where am I? So what I did to make this possible, because you need the activity ID to display the comments, and I was too lazy to actually for each site I make to hard code the activity ID. So what I did, I made this separate Google Plus page just for my blog, and I have for each post I have a link to one of my sub pages, and what I do, I check the activities of this page, look for the one which has the right URL in it, and then I display the comments for this URL. So I'm doing two steps. I just first let it look for the right post with the URL, and then I display the comments. So if I just go here, there's only one comment, but so if I look, where's the this one? No. Yep. Let's go to the script. Let's see. Activity ID. Yeah, so what I'm doing here, first I do a request. So in this case I'm not using the JavaScript line, I'm just using jQuery.get in this case, which also works. I have my page ID and request the recent activities, and I only request 100 because I'm not planning to have more than 100 sub pages on my site at any time soon. Then I just run the request, and then I check if I have an attachment, which is an article, and then I check if I have the same URL, and if I have the same URL, I know that's my correct activity ID. And once I have the activity ID, I do another request here, which requests the comments for this activity and then just displays them on the page. So list by activity. Yeah, so as I said before, you can also request people who +1 or reshared a post. And so the problem is, one topic that's been interesting to many people is I can access who reshared my post, but I don't get the direct link to the reshare. So I don't know how many know this ripples diagram, which shows like the person and person who reshared. I'm just going to show this quickly. Let's see, I'm just going to take, let's go to Explore, just take a heavily reshared one, few ripples. So in this case you see who has reshared the post, and in this case you also see the post, but with this diagram you don't see the comments on the post. So one thing I've been interested in is figuring out, okay, I've made a popular post and I want to know what people are talking about on all the reshares. And the problem is this isn't really easily possible in the API, but it is possible. Let's see. So if you want to do this, the first thing you of course need is the activity ID of the post you want the information about. Then you get the list of people who reshared this. So what you get is a list of the people who reshared the post. Then in the next step, what you need to do is you have to request the activities for each of those, because that's the only way to access the post. So in this case, if you say you sorry. So if you say you have like 50 people who reshared this, you have to request 50 activity streams of each of those. So we are up to 50 requests at the moment, or 52, 51, yeah. So we get all the posts. Next, what we're gonna check is if it's actually a reshare of my activity. So as I said, in the object.id, I have the original post ID, and if this matches my ID, I know this is a reshare of my post. So then I have a list of all the reshares, which is already, so I have the post, but I need the comments of the post. So for each of those reshares, I'm gonna request the comments. So we are up to 50 for each of them, one request, so we are up to 100 API requests. And then I can use them. So I actually implemented this. I don't know how many know the comment tracker. Anybody? So what this does is it lets you collect information from various resources and displays them in one unified stream. The main idea behind this was to use it for Hangouts on Air, where people broadcast and they want to have feedback from the people. So they have YouTube comments, they have Google Plus comments, they might have information on Twitter. So what I'm doing here, let's see, let's take this post here. No, well, oh, okay. So what I'm doing here, I can give this a plus URL. What I'm doing first is I actually have to find this post. The problem is this ID appears nowhere in the API. I can't use this ID to request. So what I'm doing, I'm using the user ID, get the stream of the person and find the one which has the URL linking to this post. So if I add this, it searches the API and I find this post. So I have one post which already has quite a few comments. And then I let it reshare I let it check for reshares. So what this actually really does is it checks of each of this person, it searches the activity stream and retrieve the code. And if we look here, we might have, let's see if we have comments on some of those. Actually we don't, which is interesting. Let's try a different post which is more... Let's see, we have one share, comments, do I have one here? This one looks good. Copy link address, I'm just gonna refresh this to get rid of it. Add URL, some comments, check reshares. So you see, yeah, there are quite a few. And you see I color coded, so we can actually tell the difference that there are some from different posts, and I'll just display all of them in one unified stream. So this takes quite a lot of requests, but it works. So my hope is that at some point the APIs will be extended so that you actually get the link when you directly request the reshares, but you never know with Google. Maybe
they want to make money with API usage.
Yeah, actually the API usage at the moment is free. You get a quota up to 10,000 requests per day, and they are very, so you can request more, and they are very, if you just explain what you are doing, they only request that you have like a privacy policy so people know what you're doing with the data, and then they are very free with how much quota they give. So actually for this one I already have a quota of 100,000. So it's already 10 times the normal amount, but for just simple tests, it's the 10,000 is more than enough. So I think, yeah, for the REST API, that would have been all for now. So, gonna take a short question round about this part of the API. Yeah, no, you just want to see more cats. Okay. The next thing is the history API. How many have heard about the history API or Google Plus history? Yeah, okay. So I'm first going to explain what Google Plus history actually is, and probably the easiest is to show you. I'm just going to close some stuff down here. Let's close this, let's close this. Let's go to history. So this is something which is in developer preview at the moment. What it does, the history is a private place inside of Google Plus, where you can collect information of stuff you do, basically. So Google already includes some, when you first activate history, it already includes some information. For example, it includes videos you have watched on YouTube. It actually includes the plus ones in there. It actually had for some time, it had your search history in there, but they turned it off because of some security issues at some point. And you also get what you buy on the Play Store, and you see you have various sources, but most of them are just test sorted for me, and they also have the instant upload in there. So you see, those are all private, so those don't go out to your stream, but you can then decide you want to share them, and then you just get a share dialog for this item. So if you're interested in using this, you have to sign up for the preview at developersgoogle.com/plus/preview, and then you have a sign up somewhere. So of course the REST API was public, so you didn't need any user authentication for this part. But now because this writes directly for one user, you need to use authentication, and Google actually made this easy by providing a sign-in button, which is also again just a simple JavaScript which you include in your site, and it does all the handling of the workflow for you. So you just need to include the +1 JavaScript results, which is the same which is used for the +1 button, share button, profile badges. Basically all the badges which you can display are inside of the script. And then you just define a class with connect. You need to define your OAuth2 client ID, which you define. You need to define the scope which you want to access, which in this case is plus.moments.write. Theoretically, if you need other scopes, if you want to use the sign-in button for something different, you can just use a different scope. For example, you can use the latitude scope to access the location history. You could use the books scope to access the library of the person. So you can use the drive scope if you want to write files to the Google Drive API. So inside here, this sign-in button can be used for access to all Google APIs actually. And then what you also define is a callback function, and once the workflow, so you get sent to the Google server, you have to authenticate, sign in, come back, and then you have the access token which you can use for requests to the API. This is client side. If you want to be on the more secure side, or if you want to store the access token server side, you can actually have a server side flow, which is for the user looks the same, but for you have one step in between where you get the access token sent to a page on the server. On this page you have to work with the access token and then call a JavaScript function which sends the client back to the original site. But basically it's the same. What you can also do, you can supply a state variable which you define, so you can check on the server side if this request is still the correct one. And you don't have to use this workflow if you have some other OAuth2 libraries which you like to use, or you can use those as well. The important thing is that you request the plus.moments.write and the plus.me scopes. The plus.me scope is that you actually allow the application to know that this is this Google Plus user. And one extension, which one library which I like to use in Chrome extension is the one by Boris Mus, which actually does, because the problem in Chrome extension is that the callback never gets called because it runs in the background script. So what this extension does is does the callback to another site, uses a content script to send the access token to the extension, and then you can use it. So it's a bit backward, but it works. It's quite interesting, but I think it's the only way to use OAuth 2 inside of a Chrome extension. I think there's no official way how to do this otherwise. But it's partly official because Boris Mus, he's working for Google, so. So let's just have a quick look. This, oh no, not this one. Let's sign out. So what this does, it just renders this button here. And now, because I'm already authenticated, it won't ask, but it opens this window, and there you would actually be asked to give permission to the application. Because I already gave it, it doesn't ask, but then you can go into your account settings and remove the permissions like for all other applications. So now we are authenticated, so what we want to do is we want to write moments. A moment is defined by a type, which can be a check-in activity, listen activity. The most generic type is just add, so it's an add activity. I added something to my history. The moment itself is defined by a URL. Now the problem with the history API is you need a public URL to define your moment. Because the way it works is the moment you send the moment to the API, then a Google bot comes, checks the URL, reads information about this moment, and enters this information into history. So you can't directly define the information about the moment inside of the API. You have to define it on some public URL. And for some moments you can define additional information like a comment or reservation details. So in this case, if you make a reservation, the target URL would be the place you make the reservation in, and then you can add additional information about the reservation for this date, whatever. And you can also add a date to the moment at which the moment happened. And I don't know if I've noticed, at the moment, I don't know if it's still possible, but when they first came out, you could actually add moments into the future. So you can. Yeah, so now, actually the request, you only have one request in this API, which goes to the version 1 moments, people, me, because I can only write moments for me and no one else. And then I write this into a vault. I have no idea why they named it vault, but. And then I just send a post request, enter the moment as string into the body, and add the access token to the request so it's authenticated. So just a simple example, I have here a moment with a add activity with a URL. I make an XML HTTP request, and then I post to moments vault, add the access token and enter my moment, and then I just send the request, and on success I get a response with the information that I've actually received. So the Google bot, when it accesses the moment, it looks first for schema.org markup. So for some special types you need special schema.org markup. So for example, for a song it has to include the artist, the title, it can include the album. For a place, for example, it would need some sort of geo information in there to accept the information. So they try to get the information out of there. If they don't manage to get the necessary information, you will get a error message that you can't add this moment because of missing information. So, for example, here so they prefer schema.org markup. If it's available, so for this case, it's a song, it's a music recording. You can add an album art, you can add the song name, you can add the artist, which is a sub-scheme of the music recording. And when this information is read, the information that is returned by the API is actually the one that Google read. So one problem I had, so what I did, for one example, you see there's a song in there, what I did is I actually created a page which would render the information based on the query string, so that I don't need a public URL for everything. I just have one URL and add the information I want encoded in the query string. And so, open up inspect, let's just view page source. So in this case I just ran the information from the query string into schema.org so that Google accepts the data. So this way you can work around the need for a public URL. And so what I've been using this for is inside of a Chrome extension, I read the music I'm listening to on Google Music, and I just put it into my history when I'm listening to it, just like Last.fm's coupling. And then if you have this information, so once the information is inside the API, you can actually decide to display it on your profile. So if I go to my profile, I have here a Moments tab. If it loads. And so you can actually decide if you want to make it public, the information for this application. You can decide what types you want to make public. So in this case, I'm just displaying the listen activities for this application on my profile. And you can decide if you want to make it to the public or to some circles. And the main idea behind this is to allow people writing to the API without spamming the stream. So you can write, but nobody will see it. But then you can go on, so either you display it on your profile so people can see it if they look at your profile, or you can then decide to just share some of the moments explicitly out to your circles. We're done, so let's just see a quick demo. So I'm authenticated here, and then I can just write a moment, and in this case I just want to write it. Let's see. And in this case you see I'm just sending this moment, and then I get a response that, okay, it was an activity, it got the DevFest, it found the description of the DevFest website, it found an image of the DevFest website, and if I go back to my history, it's here. So it is pretty much faster. It is just added this item to my activity, to my history. And so the thing is, I'm not quite sure about the real use cases for this. So there's probably a big use case in the mobile area if you think about applications like Runtastic, Fitography, which just keep track of things you're doing and then just write it to your history. So, and also like I'm using it in Chrome extensions to keep track of stuff which I'm doing on other websites. Another use case would, for example, be you could, if you wanted to, take your Twitter stream and just push it into your history if you want. But then you could also decide, okay, I have my Twitter in Google Plus and I can display this on my profile, so I have my Twitter stream on my profile page as well. So, I'm not sure how we are in time. I think, I'm not sure, most of you planning to stay for the Hangouts API talk afterwards, because then we just can end now and then take in the Hangouts API part afterwards, if that's okay with you. Or I can just talk a little bit about the Hangouts API. I'm not sure how much time we have left. I'm not sure about the schedule. Oh well. Just quickly. So a Hangouts app is as I said, it's a web application running inside of an iframe, and you can have APIs to communicate with the Hangouts in and out and have events if people leave and change. So if you define a Hangouts API, you define it as an XML where you have your CSS, your JavaScript, your HTML, and the Hangouts JavaScript API. So this is the main information, and if I take just this information here without any extra data, and I'm just gonna start a Hangout with this application. Let's see. So what I have here, this white frame here, this is our application. So we are inside of an iframe here, and what we can do already is look at, so because we are inside of an iframe, if you do debugging in the developer tools, you have to change the frame to the gadget frame so that we're in the correct frame. And what I can do here now, I can just take a look at the API request, which is gappy.hangout. And you see I already have different calls which I can get. I can get the local participant, for example. So if we call gappy.hangout.get local participant, I get an object where I have, if you see, I have my display name, my ID, my image URL which I can use. Again, with this ID I could just do extra requests to the Google Plus API. Then I have some information. I am running the app, obviously. If other people are inside of the Hangout who don't have the app enabled, I could request for this, have camera, and then I have, this is a unique Hangout ID, so if I join the Hangout twice from a different computer, for example, I would have the same person ID, but my Hangout ID, Hangout participant ID would be a different one. And so inside of the Hangout, you can, so I'm going into more detail in the next session, but you can, for example, as you saw, you can access the participants, and you also have, for everything you can access, you actually have events which you can add listeners to. So in this case, you can add a listener if participants change. So if they leave, if they join, if they start the app, if they leave the app, and I can react to all those changes. So if I have like a game and people come in and go, I can react to make sure they don't destroy the game flow. And then what we have, which is probably the most interesting part in my opinion about the Hangout API, is the shared state, which is the data namespace. In this case, the shared state is just it's just an object really. It's string keys, string values, and this is shared between all Hangout participants. So if I write something to the state, all other participants will see the same information. So if I just do a gappy.hangout.data.set value, just in this case I'm just setting the key test to the value, and in this application I have registered a state changed event just to see what's happened. So I have here added keys, key test as expected. I also have a timestamp when the key was added, and I have my full state. So if I add another value here, I have one added key, but my full state now has two values. So what is interesting about this is that actually now I have the state saved. So let's say my connection fails and I have to re-enter the Hangout. As long as the same Hangout is running, the state will be preserved for the application. So if I just go and start my application again now, and go to the console and gappy.hangout.get data.get state. Now frame. Yeah, that happens when you're in the wrong frame. I actually have my two values still left. So this is something, if you have, depending on the application, right? If you say you have a game and you want to keep score, then you can actually make sure that it stays safe if you keep it in the shared state, because if people drop out and come back in again, they will still have the same state. This is limited to this one Hangout session. So if I start a new Hangout, the information will be lost, of course. One thing that's important about the shared state is that, as you can see, it's very easy to manipulate. So if let's go back to the game example. If somebody just goes in and sets that value my score highest, then they can manipulate it. So that's something you have to know, because I can just add bogus data in there. I can just add strings that don't decode correctly, because in many cases you will just add JSON.stringify objects in there to have more information. So this is something you have to be careful when using the shared state, because someone might just go in and mess up your application. Yeah.
Coming from IRC background, can you define some kind of operators or privileged users in Hangout?
Actually, no. The only thing that where this is somehow possible is if you have a Hangout on Air, the broadcaster itself who started the Hangout on Air will have a flag. So if you look back to the get local participant, you see you have this flag is broadcaster. So this is only set in a Hangout on Air if I'm really the broadcaster. So this is the only thing where you can define this. For all other cases, you will have to make sure of this yourself. So what I've seen some people do is that they define the first person who starts the application will be put into the shared state as host, and then you can query for this. But then again, somebody could go ahead and just change the variable. But you can do probably some stuff if you do some encoding of the information that only the host itself has the key to. So that's something you can. And I've seen especially for real-time application for physics games, for example, where the calculations can be done by each one, and after some while probably the state will look completely different for everyone. They also take one master, which in certain periods overrides the information of the clients. Because what you also have, in addition to, Stefan just shows me that we're gonna continue with the Hangouts part in the next session now. But I'm just gonna quickly. What I did is to show what is. I did an Hangouts API playground, which just displays some information, because you can see you can also get like face tracking information, and this is something we're gonna play with in the next session, where you can actually let's display face tracking overlay, because you can see you have all fun stuff you can do with this. But this is something we're gonna do in the next session.
That's not in the standard API.
What? That's in the standard API. You have image overlays, you have audio overlays, but yeah, more details in the next session.